Coaching as Benevolence, a podcast for people who are curious about using coaching for self-development. I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings Grief and Loss Coaching.
And I'm L Shawn with Michelle Sage Place Positive Intelligence Coaching.
So we are back from spring break here in Colorado and starting season 8 of our podcast, which I can't believe we've been doing this for starting 8 seasons now. But every time we talk during our podcast, I always learn something new. And so I'm excited about what this season 8 has to offer our listeners as well. And so first and foremost, we're going to be talking about our journal in this season that we just released. It's a guided journal with multiple sections, and we're going to go prompt by prompt to provide a little bit more nuance and instruction on how to engage the journal. And I'm excited about that for our listeners. On the other end of that, I was meeting up yesterday with a friend of mine who I actually hadn't seen in a few years. And we were having a conversation, given some of her more challenging life circumstances over the past few years, about everything from coaching to just how each of us were doing to kind of what we were learning. And one of the main themes that came up for us is something that she had said, and then I'm going to kind of take it and spin it in a different way. But just that in our life journey, we get these different nuggets of wisdom, right? What we use in our podcast. And we don't know when and where those will come from. And we don't know which ones of those will stick. So we may get one from a therapist or a professional. But on the other end, a lot of these come from our friends, from challenging conversations, from conversations with stranger we might meet on vacation, all over the place. We are amassing these little nuggets of wisdom. And I love how that led our conversation to kind of talk about, well, what are some of those that we've gotten? And the ones that she highlighted were the ones she had received mostly through friends and lived situations and not necessarily from professionals. And so, yes, we are a podcast about coaching and coaching as a profession as well. But on the other end of that, there's so much each of us glean at different points in our life. And for some reason, some of that sticks more than the other. And on top of that, that really just highlights our own unique journey in this world. And yes, we may have similar nuggets of wisdom or lessons or ideas or even skills and strategies that we might find useful. But it's really interesting too, when we think of how sporadic that is given to us through friends and strangers, and then how what sticks is also very different for each person in a lot of ways. And it seems like there's no design in this. It's a very creative process. And on top of that, with that creativity, we're getting these at points in our life where we might need them more than others. It's almost like, did this manifest because this is what I needed? Or is this something that just really stands out at this point in time in my life too? So it was such a fruitful conversation, a great time to connect with an old friend, and then really relates back to our journal, because our whole journal is built on our coaching nuggets of wisdom within our podcast and how those then can be dripped and layered through various ways of being, all the way to taking action and flourishing. So I will leave it there and turn it over to you, L Shawn, to continue, I guess, talking maybe a little bit about both this topic of our journal and then the topic of how we get these skills and strategies and ways of being and thinking that may seem random, but they stick in important ways.
Yeah, I think this is a really good topic because I think it really speaks to the wisdom and insight that is available to us, not just through professionals, but also through our friends and family, and also through social media and other outlets where we might see someone talking, or we might see a speech, or one thing comes to mind is teachers, that kind of thing. When you look back and you think about the people in your lives that have had influence in your thinking, or the way that you view the world or yourself, I think when you do an inventory of that, you can just see how there's just an abundance of insight and wisdom out there. And it comes from unexpected places. It could come from something as significant as a loved one or a teacher, someone who's in your life for a long time, or it could just come from like a conversation that you have with a stranger and they say something that sticks out for you and gets you thinking about yourself, your place in the world, other people's experiences. And so I think one thing that is really common theme throughout that is there's an emotional piece to it. So if you have a sense of admiration or a sense of love or a sense of being cared for, a sense of being valued, heard, or seen, I think that helps lock in those pearls of wisdom or nuggets of wisdom that we get from interacting with other people, whether it be a mentor, a loved one, a stranger, or just hearing something on the radio or hearing or seeing something on social media. If there's a strong emotional reaction or something emotional related to that, it really does stick. For me, I'll just speak for myself. And neurologically speaking, we know that both Eryn and I, our background is education, and we know that emotion plus information equals learning. So we really want to make sure that those things are meaningful to our students. And so what creates meaning, something that creates meaning is having that emotional piece, whether it's humor, having fun, like entertainment, or a profound experience. Those things are going to stick with us neurologically and also influences us. There are other places where I have gotten insights or sayings, but just ideas. There's a movie, and it's probably based on a play, but it was an old movie, like 70s or something like that, called Man of All Seasons or Man for All Seasons. I think it was about, and I can't remember, it was a lawyer or what would be called a barrister in England. It was a lawyer in England, but there's a speech that he gives about the devil, and he's talking about the law, and there's this man, this character who is not a very good person, and his son and his daughter-in-law or adult children are talking to him. He's a lawyer, and they're like, well, we have to change the law or ignore the law in order to get this bad person. And the main character has this speech that just sticks with me whenever I think about the rule of law. If you compromise on the law to get the devil will turn around and there will be nothing stopping the devil from taking over. So the idea is, even if it means a bad person gets away, or even if it means we're not able to get someone right away, we have to keep those protections of the law and how important it is to stay true to the rule of law. Because if we compromise on that in the name of getting the bad guy, it'll be bad for us because we won't have any protections when the devil turns around and comes after you. So it was just an interesting thing that comes to mind when I think about nuggets of wisdom and things that I stand for in terms of rule of law when I'm voting, when I'm thinking about, okay, is this protecting the laws that we have in place, and why do we have these laws in place? And the reason why that sticks with me, and this is going back to what I was saying about emotion, it was a performance. And I can see him talking to the adult children, and I can see the image that he created, which was an image of trees that block the wind. And if you cut down the trees to get to the devil, when the devil turns around, there will be nothing to stop the wind that comes through. So those images, the emotion of this rousing speech that the character had, I can see it in my mind's eye, and I can hear that timbre of his voice, which comes with, those classically trained actors, the Shakespearean actors. And so that's just an example of how those things can really stick in our minds. And then also a way that we can use those elements if we want to create our own mantra, or we want to create our own saying that we can hold on to, that's going to help us bring to mind not only the intellectual thoughts and ideas behind the words, but the feeling of the words. So those are some things that came to mind as you were talking, Eryn.
So to clarify, it sounds like in that example, that is something that has really stood out to you and has stuck with you over however many years.
Yeah.
And it had you're thinking about it hasn't changed much. Is that correct?
That's correct. It hasn't changed much. And it is also something that I go back to many, many times when people talk about how we need to change or compromise certain fundamental laws that we have, like constitutional laws, like I'm going to just talk about the First Amendment and freedom of speech. often think about that speech and the thought of the trees being cut down and not giving yourself the protection necessary to block the wind, and remembering how people in power change and how those things change, but the law stays the same and it can protect us. So it's really important to work within the fundamental framework of our laws before we make a decision that could possibly hurt us later. That's something that I often think about it. I always go back to that speech and the feeling of, I don't want to say righteousness, but it's a feeling of certainty, and certainty that the rule of law is so important. And we can't compromise the rule of law because it will lead to a short-term win, but in the long run, it could hurt us. So that's something that I always think about when those types of questions and those discussions come up. That speech always comes up in my mind.
Yeah, it really stuck because it's partially like an episodic memory where it's tied. Yeah. And then on top of that, it seems like it's foundational to your values and your beliefs. And so some of those things throughout our lifetime may not change that much. Whereas we may get other information or other skills and strategies that completely pivot us into someone a little bit new or different, or shift us into thinking about things a little bit differently. And I think for me, it has been a little bit more of that spiritual evolution on some parts, where I have had different moments over the past 10 years that were layered into my life that help me connect to my values more and help me connect to a higher belief system as well. So I just love how these examples are quite different, and yet they're leading us on these paths of us engaging meaningful work and work that aligns with who we are within our personality, but also on these deeper levels as well. So I love your example. And I think that your example ties really well into the first prompt in our journal. Just as a reminder, the guided journal is called Coaching Nuggets of Wisdom to Inspire, Explore, Act, and Flourish, a guided journal to live your best life. It's divided up into those sections of inspire, explore, act, flourish. We're going to look at inspire first, because that is the first section of the journal and the first prompt. And I think we can keep tying this prompt back to our topic today of getting these little nuggets of wisdom woven into our lives from various perspectives or various points of view that really stick with us or change our perspective or make us grow deeper into the roots that we have. So looking at the first prompt, here's what it says. What does turning a new page look like? And as you turn the page, what will you write? New beginnings and rewriting our stories start by turning a new page. When we turn a new page, start a new year or job or move to a new place, we can focus on the present and the future. We can take what we have learned from the past and use those lessons as building blocks for inspired action. We hold the pen in our hands as we write a different, better version of our lives. With the pen in our hands, we possess the power to write anything we want. We can reinvent ourselves and change our perspectives. As you hold your pen and write in the pages that follow, what does turning a new page look like? And as you turn the page, what will you write? I love these questions, and they align so much with this topic that, also just kind of appeared this weekend and ties perfectly into the direction of where this journal takes our readers and writers. And so this idea of turning a new page where we can also root into who we are, some familiarity, but we can also make changes as well. And it was really evident in the conversation I was having with my friend yesterday that that's exactly where she was at in terms of complete perspective shifting on different aspects of her life, that even amidst the hardship, these new perspectives and new way of being have led her to a better life, just like this prompt says. There's always that hope. And I think that I want to tie that back to the meditations throughout the Easter season. One of them is that we are instructed within this book that I'm reading to find the joy amidst the grief and to hold on to hope amidst hardship and those sorts of things. And those by themselves are fine. But there's also this inspired action, right? That I think you spoke so eloquently to, L Shawn. There's that inspired action that comes along with this prompt in the journal. And that can be found or felt by these little skills and nuggets of wisdom you're getting from friends and family and strangers and professionals. But it can also be felt deeply within oneself as one reflects on this first prompt. And when it says, inspired action, it doesn't mean that one has to take that inspired action quickly. This is laying a foundation for people who read this journal and journal within this journal to take a meaningful reflection and all throughout the inspire section, all the way throughout the explore section. So 2 sections of this book before there is more of this inspired action. And yes, sometimes it makes sense to jump to action right away. And there are moments of that where I've learned I needed to do that and do that quickly. But overwhelmingly, it's more of this creative process that I kind of mentioned earlier on, that these nuggets, you don't know where they're coming from and when they'll land. But when they all kind of come together, there's the fluidity to take them with oneself and grow with them and use them in a way that is purposeful and used with intention. And so really feeling inspired by reading this prompt again after we wrote this journal together, I think that this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I love the turning a new page. If you think about spring and how spring is about rebirth and new beginnings. And I love the idea of, writing from this journal prompt now at this time of year when things are blooming, not just plants, but also not just flowers, but also to go back to your reconnection with your friend. There's reconnections, there's rebirths, there's new beginnings, and it's a really exciting time of year. And to be thinking about turning a new page, and I love the words in the prompt of holding the pen in your hand, that tactile sensation, that empowerment. You're writing your story, and you get to decide what this new chapter looks like. And you can decide, maybe it's not a new chapter, maybe it's a new volume in the story that is your life. There's just so much power in that prompt. And it's exciting and it's encouraging to think about how you can recreate or augment your life in a way that's fresh and new, that builds on what you've done before. And it also opens up your imagination. You can dream. This is a dreaming prompt. This is where you can put down those guardrails because you are safe. This is a safe space for you to dream and see how great and how wonderful your life can look and how exciting it can be. What are the things that you want? What are the things that you love? What are the things that ignite your soul and spark your passion and make you laugh and want to dance or walk or run or whatever you like to do with movement? Put that on the page. So I think that this prompt is such a great way to start the journal and to build off of that, just like a great springboard into other areas of our lives that can inspire. So yeah, it's really exciting.
I love your play on words with springboard. It's so eloquently stated.
Right, that was not planned.
I don't know. It sounded like it was like all part of the thinking. Yeah. And I want to go back in the prompt too, where it says about building blocks. Let me see if I can find this here. We can take what we have learned from the past and use those lessons as building blocks for inspired action. So building blocks, that term, I really like that because it holds a space for people to journal about what are those? Because, if you're talking about them, you may not even be aware, right? My friend who was talking about some of the things she had learned, when she was able to talk about them, she's able to get more clarity and become more aware of what those building blocks are. And so if you get stuck within this prompt as a listener or as a writer within this journal, I think one of the key things is really going back to that reflection on the building blocks. What are those lessons that have led you to where you are? And they don't always have to be positive, right? Some of the building blocks are quite challenging. And in fact, a lot of them may be that more so, right? Because sometimes in our deepest challenges is where we get the most inspired downloads or the most wisdom. But also we can be inspired from building blocks from things that go well too, and being able to reflect on those and what is going well, what was going well, what are the nuggets that led you to those things. It's always these random conversations that I want to go back to from the beginning of this podcast that has led to a lot of my growth, whether it's been about money or health or relationship or grief, even, or friendships or a deeper understanding of the world. These have all maybe at the time seemed like insignificant interactions or, oh, yeah, that was nice information to have, but in one ear out the other. But then it's amazing. Our brain and our soul, like what we hang on to out of all of that. Like, what do we want out of all of that and need? And then how are we paying attention to that too? And this journal prompt allows people to pay attention to things more, to sit with things a little bit more, to better understand why is this so important to me? Or why is this really standing out to me? Or maybe I have outgrown this lesson and I'm grateful for it. And I can move into this next space, learning something different or building on that lesson and growing from that too. I tend to be a little less logical sometimes and just like think of things a little more spiritually or out in the universe or whatever. I was like, there is to me in this chaos and in this creative process, some semblance of meaning that needs to be made. And it is only aligned with oneself in terms of what those specific lessons are at any given time. Is everything that purposeful when it's a creative and chaotic process? I think it could be. I think there is maybe some line there that is worth reflecting on and really gleaning some of that purpose from. It's nice to talk about this prompt aloud too, because then I have more to write about for this prompt.
There's so much richness in the prompt itself. And I mean, that's a really good point that you made, Eryn. I think why not do this with a friend? Get the journal together and do it together. Talk about it like Eryn and I are doing, and follow our podcast and follow the episodes in this season 8. That's what we'll be doing, is looking at these prompts and having this discussion, because part of journaling is processing, talking out loud and talking with someone and getting those insights and hearing yourself talk, and then also having other people reflect back, is a really good way to really solidify and clarify your thoughts. So I think it would be a great idea to get a group of friends and listen to the podcast every week and, talk about the prompt and do the prompt every week together. That would fortify the efforts. And also when you do something with another person, you're more likely to complete the task if you do it with a friend or in a group. So I think that would be a really good idea to talk about these. And also, if journaling, writing isn't something that you're really into, think about voice notes. We have technology today where you can record yourself on the phone talking about the prompt, and then you listen to it after you record it so you can hear yourself and you can kind of get a sense of the themes that are coming up and the different values that present themselves as you are processing the questions in this prompt. So that's some ideas that I had when you were talking, Eryn.
I love that observation. I wasn't even thinking, I was thinking, oh, discuss, but like actually going through this with a friend is a great idea. I love that. And then I have a question, I guess, for you, because this first prompt is about like turning a new page. And you recently, more recently, turned the page to move from Japan back to Colorado. Is there another example you have in your own life where you are turning a new page? How maybe some of the questions in this prompt might be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really very timely, this prompt for me, because not only have I turned a page in terms of going from a life in Japan to a life in Colorado, I've turned a page in my career as well. So I've gone from assistant director to incoming executive director, which is quite a shift in leadership, the way that you look at plans, the scope, the depth, and also there's more weight to things and more responsibilities. So it's also really exciting as well, because there is some empowerment in the shift. That it's really exciting to forge new partnerships, to reconnect, and to rekindle, some partnerships that maybe have lain dormant for a while. And now there is opportunity to revive those partnerships and see if there's still an opportunity for connection there. So yeah, that's where I have turned a new page. How about you, Eryn?
I don't have anything quite as clear cut. I think I'm in a phase a little bit before that, like trying to make decisions about where my business is headed, where my volunteer time is headed, bringing my time with family. So it's like right now it's more of a prioritization process, maybe. I don't know. But as far as turning a new page, though, one of the biggest lessons in my life has been learning to let go and what to hold on to. And that is one of those that is like all those nuggets of wisdom continuously layered in throughout my adulthood, trying to revisit that consistently about, and that goes to prioritization too, right? I didn't even make that connection until I said that out loud, hence why we should be processing these prompts out loud. but anyway, yeah. So just, I think for me, it is, how do I arrange my life in a way that is meaningful, purposeful? And I think that's always a work in progress, right? It's not a finite thing, but just continuing on that level is how I'm turning a new page. And then also with this journal in particular, we are turning a new page as we put this out into the world and now need to start back from square one. How do we get this out there? Because it will help people. It is a really well thought out guided journal. And when I try to journal without a guided journal like this, my journaling is so shallow. But when I have a guided journal like this, I can actually go with more depth. And so I firmly believe this is one of those tools that can be used in so many ways and for so many people. So the question then becomes, how do we share that? How do we get the word out there? And how do we turn the page with this journal so that we're not only holding on to it, but we're sharing it with the world? And I think that is something here moving throughout spring and into summer that I want to put more energy to and turn that page and really, really focus on a lot. So I think that has come up for me here as well. And this has led me into my favorite space to be in, which is the creative space. So anytime I'm going to create visuals to go with this or create writing or something, I really enjoy that process. So it's also a matter of leaning into the joy, right? And leaning into how you find joy. I think I haven't listened to it, but this morning and one of the TED Talks that came into my work email was how you let joy in, or joy is right there. It's just right there, right? Like, how do you do this? And so I'm interested in that piece, I think, as I turn this page professionally. And it is a step a little bit outside of grief work, which is nice to give a little bit of balance, I think, to the current work that I do. So yeah, I think those are all kind of the key things. And then just this question, when we hold the pen in our hands, we write a different, better version of our lives. I like how that's worded because, again, going back to hope, it is a very hopeful statement, but there's no parameters, right? We can write whatever our mind, heart, soul, body are sharing with us to manifest into the world. So I think sitting with that sentence and really listening inward and listening within what's going on in one's body and mind and heart can be really helpful too. And I think for me, that's another turning the page personally, where I need to hold that space without rushing that space.
I think that really brings us to that part of our episode where we do coaching nuggets of wisdom. And one of the things that came to mind is, since we are doing something a little different this season, why not do something a little different in terms of our coaching nugget of wisdom? So Eryn, I'll put that out there and see what you think. And just do like a call to action for each of the prompts that we do. And I guess one thing that comes to mind is, because we are in the inspire and we are talking about inspired action, action is more effective if done as a result of inspiration. Inspired action has more clarity, more focus, and for me is more effective and is more aligned with my values and authentic self. And so what do you think, Eryn? Before I even go there, do you want to still stick with that coaching nuggets of wisdom, or would you rather do a call to action? What are you thinking?
No, I love it. I think I really like your thinking on that, and I'm on board with that for sure.
So fantastic. So for season 8, we will do calls to action. And one call to action I have is go to Amazon. We'll have a link in the description of this episode. So go to the Amazon and purchase the journal and participate in the journal writing with us. We can be your companion, and we would love for you to invite a friend and write to us, because there is a way to do that. We will also have a link to our website. You can ask us questions, give us some suggestions. What would be supportive for you on this journey? So that's my call to action. Eryn?
Oh, I love it so much. I love it so much. The first thing that comes to mind for that call to action piece is just to reiterate what you said about once you buy the journal, we are offering extra support for free throughout this season 8, where we're going to go in depth with each prompt, just like we did with the first prompt here. So I think there's a lot of support, and that's exciting. Another call to action, I would say, is going back to what L Shawn said, is maybe upping the urgency a little bit in that this is spring. We're getting into spring. This is a really good time of year to start your work throughout all of these prompts, because then it's a really nice lead up through the fall, so that you aren't scrambling for New Year's goals or anything when that time hits. You're just much more aligned in general. So I would say don't hesitate. Take the moment to invest in yourself with this, because this is a really great time to start the process.
Thanks for joining us for Coaching as Benevolence. I'm L Shawn with Mayshell Sage Place, Positive Intelligence Coaching.
And I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings, Grief and Loss Coaching.
Have a benevolent day.